What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Dead Out YouTube channel. We're back with another This or That, looking at the 2024 class of which wide receiver 3 do you want? We're going to be looking at Xavier Worthy or Malik Nabers and kind of discussing, hey, based on ADP right now, they definitely do have a different ADP, so this isn't one of those ones where they're going kind of close. But even if you're not in Devy, if you're looking at like who's next, who's coming next year's class, this is a great video to kind of get you guys prepared for some of the wide receivers in that class. I know I've talked about them, but it's always fun to get a different viewpoint on the channel of these guys and where they're going. So we're going to be looking at numbers, strengths, weaknesses, looking at some advanced stats a little bit. We don't want to get too advanced on this show. That's not what we're here for. But we'll get diving into it after the intro. All right, let's get into it. And I think that the wide receiver class, the 24 class, like we and Christian talked about it, looking at who should you be drafting, where are these guys going? Where there's a lot of question marks about that wide receiver 3 in a lot of people's eyes, not necessarily some people's eyes, but in a lot of people's eyes. So Xavier Worthy, in our last mock that we kind of did here for the channel, went 201 wide receiver 3. Now he's gone all over the place. So Xavier can go in the top 8 sometimes at the 201, sometimes the mid-second if he falls that way. This was a very running back heavy draft that we did. So sometimes he goes a little earlier. And then Malik Nabers actually fell to the 3rd round, probably the latest I've seen him at wide receiver 10. So when we're thinking of ADP and where these guys are going, you have to, think about it as well when you're drafting these guys. Just draft both. We're not going to do that on this day, but like, who would you rather have? Where does that kind of look? And just to kind of understand kind of the differences, right? So if you like Malik in the 3rd, you think he's going to be better. Maybe you take a shot on, someone else. Maybe you want Drew Alder there, or maybe you think Donovan Edwards is going to in the 2nd round, and you can get a guy like Malik later. So that's what we're doing here. Christian's going to run us through Worthy. I know he likes Worthy a lot, and what he did last year and maybe his freshman year.
Yeah, so freshman year burst onto the scene was the next big thing, almost 1,000 yards on a really bad offense. Hudson Card was the quarterback most of that year. Gets Quinn Ewers back for the most part. Hudson Card was still out there this last year. 13 games, 60 receptions, 760 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Very much so less productive. The caveat here is that he was very much so injured. I think he had a break in his hand or a very, very bad sprain. I can't remember what the exact injury is.
It was a broken hand.
Yeah. So he played through a broken hand, and as a receiver, that is very difficult to do. You'll hear a lot of people talk about his drops and things like that. We'll talk about his strengths and weaknesses, but just know that that broken hand certainly played a role in him being a little less productive in 2022.
Yeah, and to your point, I think he had one of the statistically and analytically one of the best freshmen ever for a freshman wide receiver ever in terms of college football, and he did it with Hudson Card. That's pretty much what you need to know there. Malik Nabers, on the other hand, kind of broke out last year and really was the best wide receiver on his team. Kayshon Boutte took a back seat, which now looks like there's a reason for that. But 72 catches, 1,000 yards, 3 touchdowns. Really would have had better numbers, but Jaden Daniels can't give him the damn ball. Just can't get it to him. Just overthrows him, underthrows him. Poor kid is out here just reaching, trying to catch anything he possibly can thrown his way. But he definitely had a very good year. Obviously, the touchdowns are a little low, but you like to see that a little higher. But he's definitely going to get in that area, and he's the clear wide receiver 1 in LSU's roster. And when you're looking at both these guys from a size perspective, Nabers is around 6 foot 195. You're talking about Xavier being 6'1", 163 is what he's listed at right now. So the size thing we'll get into, but just to kind of give you guys perspective of where they're at as prospects. So give us your strengths and weaknesses on Xavier.
He gets open, man. The separation ability of Xavier Worthy is absolutely remarkable. He's got that quick twitch type of route running style that can, he can create separation at all 3 levels of the field. But sometimes those guys are like, okay, he's 165 pounds soaking wet. I have to throw him in the slot. Worthy, to me, is not that type of player. He can certainly, he's fast. He can stretch a defense vertically as well. And the ball tracking is really good. I mentioned the broken hand last year. He certainly dropped a lot of those deep balls last year. I think that played a role in that. The hands are the one major concern, I would say, the hands and the size. But yeah, he's got to eat a lot of McDonald's or Burger King to get up to the size that we're going to want him at. I don't think that's ever going to be the case. But the hands, I think the good thing is he attacks the football in a very, very sound way. He's a consistent hands catcher. And the reason that we did see some drops is, once again, he just had that bad hand, and you could tell that he was kind of nursing it at times. But in terms of strengths, incredible separator. I think that the body control and the ball tracking, all the things that you look for in a guy that can command a large target share and be a productive guy at the NFL level.
Yeah, he has some whip routes on his tape that you like, oh my God, that just making guys look silly. Like, that's a lot of fun. Yeah, footwork, explosiveness, like that all kind of sits there. I will also say he's hit his weighted dominator rating. So in terms of, like, experience adjusted dominator rating, what you like to see, he's hit that 2 years in a row, even with this last year where he wasn't very good. Put in perspective how good his freshman year was. It was almost at 0.40 on his weighted dominator rating, so 40%. And usually you want to see him around 18%. That's essentially how dominant he was. Even last year, he did head over the 25% mark, and he could be that kind of guy for you. And I do think the offense is going to be better. Quinn Ewers, you're going to have a better offense than last year. Now, let's talk about Malik. So what does Malik stand out to you? For me, wide receiver 10 is underrated. I do think there's some guys maybe going over him that you definitely maybe want to pivot off of when you're talking about mock drafts and Devy drafts. I think for me, the thing that stands out about Neighbors is athleticism, toughness, press coverage. They can't stop him off of press coverage. Like, he's able to get off there. He was open a ton. Like I mentioned earlier, in terms of where Jayden Daniels is at, he creates separation too, but in a different way than Worthy. Worthy is definitely more of the footwork experience, understanding kind of leverage and doing those things. Neighbors is that brute strength wide receiver. He's just going to get open. He's going to just shove your ass out of the way. And he plays with that kind of tenacity as a receiver, kind of like LSU guys do, though. Like, if you're thinking of LSU wide receivers, Chase, Jefferson, these guys. And I'm not saying even Terrace Marshall in college was really good at it. I'm not saying he is those type of level of prospect, but those dudes, that's how they get open. And that's kind of what you see moving forward. As far as weaknesses go, I do think he does win on athleticism, but route running could use a little bit of refinement. Not like perfect when you're looking at it. Like, he gets open, but he gets open brute strength. That stuff's not going to work at the next level. And I think that's where you struggle with, like, Terrace Marshall. Terrace Marshall did all those other things, but I don't necessarily think he had that route running ability there. I do think Neighbors is a better athlete, but again, just to kind of give you guys some context. And then, off press coverage, he doesn't really get hit off routes, but he can get pushed off routes at the other levels. So, and I think that just really comes from the route running perspective. When you put his advanced numbers together with him, and I compared him to basically essentially every LSU wide receiver when I ran the numbers, he's around, in terms of dominator rating this last year, he hit the dominator rating just over 20, and he's around Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson's kind of dominator rating his sophomore year. So we're expecting a big jump. Hopefully that's what you're looking for. Quarterback is still going to be Jayden Daniels in that offense. And I think that is the question mark. Nussmeier is there as the backup. I would love Nussmeier to get a little bit of run this year for him. But I think it's a great value play for him in that third round. Do you have anything on Neighbors?
Yeah, I mean, I do. It's very much so a cliff note or a footnote in his profile, but he did have a little bit of trouble with the law. I think that when you look at that,
my bad.
Yeah, when you look at that LSU team and what has happened there, I think that should be in the back of your mind a little bit in terms of projecting to the NFL, because those guys, he will be asked questions about that and he'll have to answer those questions. So hopefully that's the only thing that we ever have to talk about regarding that, but something to keep in mind as well.
That's a good point. I'm glad you brought it up. Yeah, off field, get your shit together. Come on, guys. Let's just, SEC guys, can we just not just stop getting Georgia too? You guys, come on, stay off. Just play football, man. That's what we got to do. All right, I think this is going to be a split one. So let's talk about it. So Xavier Worthy and Malik. Now, again, you can necessarily draft both of these guys. So it's not like you have to pick between other. But if we had to pick, based on what we're projecting here, who would you grab? So Christian, you go first.
I take Xavier Worthy. I think that he's the better player, but I do want to say Malik Neighbors is right behind him in my rankings for next year. I do have a kind of significant break between them in terms of the combined rankings. I have Xavier Worthy up at wide receiver 18, which I know is super high, but I get aggressive with the college guys. If you want to see all of these rankings, go to our Patreon, which is on the screen right now and in the description. I have Malik Neighbors at 30. So I do think that both of them have a ton of dynasty upside. And from that perspective, I almost picked Malik because of where he is currently going. Now, I think he's going there because it's cyclical. I think once we get back in season, if Garrett Nussmeier can get on the freaking field, I think Malik Neighbors is going to have an absolutely tremendous year. I think both of these guys are set up very nicely to have productive years, but I'll take Worthy's ability to separate and say, okay, I think that translates more than I will project Neighbors to become a better route runner and things like that. So that's why I lean Worthy.
I'm gonna lean Neighbors just for content purposes, but also like it's close. I mean, they're right there, 3-4. I think from like Texas's perspective, Worthy's got some competition in that wide receiver room. Donnie Mitchell is there now. Jordan Whittington is healthy, and he's kind of that glue guy that's always there. Isaiah Neyor, if he's back, Jonte Cook could be in there. Casey Kane, DeAndre Moore, Ryan Niblett. They got guys out there now where he's going to be competing. I also think Jonathan Brooks is really good in the receiving game too. So like there's some targets that have to be earned out there. So you could see a scenario where he doesn't hit 1,000 yards receiving again and maybe that production. And I'm not saying that's the end all be all, but I do think that's something to kind of note where Malik Neighbors, I think he's the guy. And again, I think that he's going to get that elite usage. He's going to earn those targets. And if he can really take off based on that 3rd round ADP, I love the fact that you're probably getting a guy that's probably going to go 110 in your rookie drafts if he hits all the ceiling and all the measurables there. The size doesn't necessarily concern me with Worthy because we just saw a couple of 170 guys get drafted in the NFL in the 1st round this last year, but he's got to be 170, right? Like we can't be rolling out a 162 wide receiver next year. So that's definitely something to kind of know. I'm not ready for the arguments on social media about his weight though. Like I am not ready for those draft takes. Those are not going to be where I go at any point in my life. But I think I lean Neighbors just based on that. But you can't go wrong with these guys, especially with where their ADP's at. But the upside, maybe I can draft a 2nd round, maybe a running back or something. Maybe someone falls there and then get Neighbors with maybe a wide receiver 3 type potential. I will lean there.
Yeah, I get it. Once again, these are guys that should be back-to-back in rankings and regarded as potential 1st round picks. That's exciting. And to your point, getting a potential 1st round pick in the 3rd round is often better than getting it at the very early 2nd round in Devy. So I like
it. Yeah, and especially if Worthy's going, like, it really depends. Like, you get a Texas fan in there, he's going 108, baby. Like, they're and that's the fun part about Devy is, like, you never know where these guys are going to go because you get a lot of college football fans that play the format. But if you can get Neighbors in that 3rd, I think that's the best value I've seen in a long time. Like, he was going probably 4th, beginning of January. People started talking about him, and now so his value is kind of plateauing a little bit. So we appreciate you guys. As always, hit that like and subscribe button. If you're not subscribed yet, I don't know what the hell you're doing. Get on it. Let's go. Subscribe and let us know how we're doing. Leave a comment. Who would you rather like? We'll check you guys on the next one.